For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Emily Rose. How's it going today, Emily?
Hey. It's
Excited?
good. It's a little wet here in Australia, but I'm excited to be on the podcast. So
Awesome. I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you. While I was eating dinner, I was listening to the album and all that fun stuff, and I'm really excited to sit down, chat, get to know more about you, introduce you to all of our faithful listeners, and all that stuff. So before we kind of jump into the new album that dropped in February, what's kind of your origin story? What kind of got you into music?
So I've been playing music since I was really small. So my mum was in musical theatre and she taught the piano actually while I was growing up. So of course I automatically had to learn the piano. And I learned probably from about like 2. As soon as I could sit up and start sort of pressing the keys, she was like, these are the notes and now we're going to learn a scale. So she sort of taught me till I was about 15. And then I got a real piano teacher, which was a shock, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I was expected to do things, and, I didn't just have someone yelling at me from the other end of the house, like, that was a wrong note. But I think, she was kind of foundational in how she just made me love music and performing, I think, because she had this musical theatre background. So, yeah, being on the stage and everything was a vibe for me when I was younger. And then, I sort of made that decision maybe when I was about 15 that I was going to pursue it really, really, really hardcore, and sort of went to a special music school and then went to uni at a conservatorium and sort of did all the classical piano stuff. And now, don't really play so much classical piano from time to time. But I got obsessed with Argentine tango, and I went and learned how to play Argentine tango and dance Argentine tango in Buenos Aires. And I got very interested in the folk music scene in Australia, and kind of found my people, I think, at folk festivals. We have some really awesome folk festivals here. And forever wanted to play jazz as well. So I was forever the girl taking all the jazz electives from the classical course at the conservatorium, and, sort of trying to get in on that as well. And I could never just do one thing.
Gotcha. Was there a specific moment that you can recall at the age of 15 when you decided to kind of start taking music a bit more seriously? Was there a specific moment that kind of triggered that?
I think it was kind of a decision that happened because of a teacher. So I had a teacher that I really liked in high school, and then she left, a music teacher. And she left to go to another school, and the person that replaced her, we really didn't get on. And I suddenly realized how important it was for me to be a musician. And so my mom was very understanding, and she found a new school for me to go to where I could really pursue music. But it kind of made it I had to make the decision to give up studying art at the time as well, which I was really passionate about as well. And couldn't do, I think I was doing some law subjects, and I was doing some science subjects as well. And this particular school didn't offer them. So I sort of had to make that decision, which I'm very glad I did. Yeah.
Gotcha. And you'd mentioned that you went to school in Buenos Aires, which is in Argentina, correct?
Yeah. Well, I went to study there,
Okay.
I suppose, privately. It was through a grant that a band of mine, a tango band, received from the Australian government, and we got to go over there, and I studied there for 3 months, and then again for 3 months a couple of years later. Spent some time there. So that definitely sort of influenced I don't know, some of my understanding of the musical world, but it's definitely not what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I've gone back to my roots of loving to write, because originally I was really into composition. So
Gotcha. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something there, because you brought that up and I was like, wait, you're in Australia now. Where did Argentina come from? But okay, now it makes a lot more sense now.
Totally. It's one of those things. I went to Germany as well, and I studied in Germany for a year. Yeah, and meeting a lot of different people from around the world. It's really cool. That's sort of the way that it influences, your art practice. It's awesome. Yeah. Gives you a wide scope.
For sure. That's the one thing that they'd always kind of told us in high school, when I was going to high school and then like college, that if you do get an opportunity to study abroad or work abroad or just travel abroad, you need to take it, because it'll change your perspective on everything, no matter what your field is. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you went to Argentina first, or did you go to Germany first?
I went to Germany first. So Germany was actually part of my conservatorium study. We got to do an exchange, and I went over there to study classical piano, and I probably spent more time, I think, playing accordion and dancing tango, than I did practicing my Beethoven. Okay. But yeah, if that's anything to go by.
Gotcha.
What I ended up doing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I mean, playing accordion in Germany kind of makes sense, because the whole it's not polka, but it's all the European Vacation, where they're the movie where they're in they're for Oktoberfest and they're just all playing.
Yeah. Well, I definitely experienced a bit of polka playing over there, but I think it was interesting for me with the accordion, because I took it up, I think, in my second year of being at uni, because I wanted to do something different. Yeah. And I was like, I saw someone playing the accordion. There was one person that was studying jazz, and he was also an accordion player. And I was like, yeah, not many people are going to do that. I'm going to do that. Yeah. And hey, it got me a lot of gigs over the years. I have to say, it introduced me into the folk festival world, which is like my home away from home now. Because a friend of mine started a klezmer band. She actually lives in New York now. Yeah, and I'd never heard of the word klezmer. I didn't even know what it was.
That's the first time I've heard of it. So
okay, so it's like Jewish music from Europe, and it's like very influenced by the Balkans and stuff. And it's,
gotcha.
There's a lot of fun dance music in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's kind of what got me into this folk scene. And I remember the first time going to a festival to play, and I was like, oh, what is this? This is a magical place, and these are my people. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. It's kind of funny to kind of transition into the new album that dropped in February. When you emailed me asking to confirm the time earlier today, and you sent me over the album to listen to, I started listening to it. And this is kind of before I had really done a deep dive into some of your background and all that stuff. And I was listening to it, and I'm like, dang, this has got a real jazzy folk sound to it. Like at least a few of the first few songs on the album there. And I was just like, I would have never thought this would have worked. Like just a folky jazz feel. And then now listening to you speak, it's like, no, it just makes perfect sense now how it works. So
yeah, awesome. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, it's kind of unusual. And look, I kind of always have that struggle of the, oh, what kind of music do you play? Oh, please tick this box, so that are you folk? Are you jazz? Are you classical? Are you indie? And it's like, kind of all of them, and others, and mix them all together.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think a lot of musicians have that issue nowadays.
Yeah. Everything is post, Yeah. It's pan, everything.
Yeah. Like my buddy's band, they try to describe what they are, but none of it's 100% accurate. So it's like, oh, we're this. And it's like, we don't know what that means. So it's interesting. So,
yeah.
So you dropped a new album in February. What's kind of the story behind, first off, what's the name of the album and what's the story behind it?
Cool. So this particular album is with a fairly new group of mine called Emily Rose and the Wild Things. It's the first time that I've completely sort of had artistic control over a group and written most of all my own material. And the album is called Upon These Open Skins, which actually comes from a lyric in one of the tracks called Complex Ships. And I started writing all of this music, when would it have been? It was at the end of 2018, when I had a moment in my life where I decided to stop doing all the tango stuff. Like I was running a tango school. I was teaching dance and music, very, very Argentine tango oriented. And I suddenly had this epiphany at a music camp, an awesome music camp called String Mania, where I was teaching, and I realized like, oh, I've gone in the wrong direction for myself, for music and like for the people that I was hanging out with. And I was like, nope, I'm done with that. And so I sort of just did this very huge life change, and decided to get back into writing my own songs. And originally I started writing it in mind that it would be a jazz project, actually. And so the first outings of the band were actually a lot more jazz heavy, all acoustic jazz instruments, no synths or anything in there. But at the same time, I started to play with a group called Rhythm Hunters, where I had to play sort of a fusion between funk and Latin, but with Indonesian grooves. And they use lots of synths and interesting sounds. And that sort of led me to go, oh, this is interesting. Why haven't I explored synthesizers? You know, I was always primarily a pianist and an accordion player and a bandoneon player when I was doing tango. And so that combined with a trip, I went to Canada and I hung out with a very awesome musician and producer there called Jaron Freeman Fox. If you don't know him, you should check him out because he's very cool. And in hanging out there and listening to, like, seeing his process, I sort of just had this moment of like, oh, I can really look at music very differently from how I have. And so that started me on this journey of like, you know what, I'm not going to fight technology. I actually need to learn how to sort of start to use it a little more. And I started to really widen my my listening from acoustic folk jazz world wider to like more experimental indie music, and just music that sort of really crossed a lot of boundaries. And that's when I went, oh, okay, these particular tunes, actually I'm going to take them and I'm going to do something different. And the album I decided was going to be a song album. I have a lot of other instrumental music as well with the group, but I thought, no, I want to explore this songwriting aspect, also within the context of having all this instrumental textures and influences as well. So it's kind of fun. It really evolved from where it started. And then, of course, the lockdown happened, COVID happened, and my partner, who plays bass in the band, we were not living together. Suddenly we were living together. And through many months of being without going out, we were like, okay, well, let's actually build a recording studio at home. So we started doing the treatment and stuff, acoustic treatment, and now we've got a full conversion. So we've got a garage as well that we converted into like a control room.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 2020, halfway through 2020, we had a brief period of things opening up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to get the whole band to come and record for 10 days. We kind of lived together for 10 days, which was fun.
Nice.
Yeah. And then a process of about 6 months of then adding to what we'd recorded, whether it be, synth passes or vocal layers, and just exploring what can happen in the studio as a process of composition and creation rather than it has to be exactly as it is live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I suppose, the little story behind it. And of course, like a lot of musicians, I was like, oh, well, I can't bring it out yet because I can't tour it. So I spent a year going, oh no, maybe not yet. Maybe not yet. And I brought out a couple of singles, but finally I was like, it's got to get out there. I've got to put it out there. I'm ready. I'm ready to write the next album,
Yeah, for sure. Now, the singles that you dropped, are those the 2 songs that are on Spotify right now?
Yes.
Okay.
I did. I dropped a couple of singles.
I did want to bring that up a little bit later because I thought you did something that I've been preaching to musicians for a while. So we will get into the finer points of what you did, and I really appreciate it. So
awesome.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else, particularly behind the stories of the album. Each song has its own story. There are a lot of songs that were written on long car drives. I tend to write lyrics while I'm driving, which is an interesting process, I think. There's one co-write with the guitarist on there, Luke Chapman. He wrote this beautiful instrumental, and I put words to it. And yeah, there's very long form pieces as well as like things on the shorter side. But yeah, it's definitely not a pop album. Like, people don't really want to play it a lot on radio because there's not a lot of 3-minute songs on there. Gotcha.
As obviously this album's been a long time in the works, for about 4 years by my calculations, if I know how to do basic math.
I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose I started writing stuff, not even thinking, I'm going to record an album. Yeah, would have been at the end of 2018. That's actually when that first co-write with the guitarist happened. So.
Awesome. And so then as you're kind of going through the process of the early stages of the album, even the early stages of forming this project, Emily Rose and the Wild Things, who are you listening to as far as musical influences, or was there any real musical influences?
That's a really good question. Gosh, I can tell you when I decided to change my direction a lot. The guitarist Lukey Chapman sent me an album by the Punch Brothers, Phosphorescent Blues, probably their most famous. And I hadn't heard of the Punch Brothers before, and I think I had that on repeat for quite a long time. I loved that. And then it's funny, I started writing some things and showing it to some friends, and they would say, oh, that sounds kind of this or kind of that. And then I'd go and listen and kind of almost be influenced in hindsight, but then probably that would influence my choices in the studio as well. So like Hiatus Coyote was one that a friend of mine was like, oh, this sounds a bit Hiatus Coyote. And I was like, oh, I should check that out. But I would say that there's a lot of influences as well. Things like in the classical world, the classical piano world, that influence like my harmony and stuff, which would be like Ravel and Rachmaninoff. But I was also listening at the time to some singer-songwriters. The Magic Lantern. Amazing. Jamie Doe, The Magic Lantern. Just phenomenal songwriting. Absolutely love it. And then there's some Australian songwriters that I really love. Lucy Wise is a beautiful songwriter in the folk scene here. Like super sort of along the Australian folk, more of maybe a Joni Mitchell
Gotcha.
kind of vibe. Very acoustic and really sweet. But also listening to a lot of things like Nils Fram, and my partner listens to so much different music. Like, it's ridiculous. He'll put things on that are, drum and bass albums, and I'll just be like, oh, sick, I love this. Yeah. I've never heard it, but I love it. So those sorts of things as well would filter in for sure. Yeah.
Cool. It's awesome, especially when you're kind of going through that process of knowing you want to change things up, at least stylistically or sound. I was about to say soundlistically, but that's not even a word. So
I love that. That's great. Why not?
All right. But, just kind of being open to listening to all sorts of new things is really cool. And it kind of gives you great perspective on what you could do or what you could bring into it. And then, of course, it was a little bit later on during the process that you decided to introduce like synths and stuff like that. Is that what you were saying earlier?
Yeah. So in my first version of the band, it was, there was even like swing numbers and stuff in there. It was a lot more on the jazz side. And I was actually writing some songs that weren't even originally for that project. It was for me and Nick, my partner, the bass player in this group, to play as a duo. And then I sort of took those things that were originally almost like for a folk duo, singer-songwriter folky duo, and went, you know what, this would be cool with a drum and bass groove. And so it completely changed the song and the production. And I wrote like giant guitar and violin expansive lines, and then I was like, take a really dirty rock solo here, Lukey, so that was really interesting. And I changed the personnel a little bit as well. So originally I'd wanted to bring the folk idea in with more of a folk instrument, which is why I've got the violin there. And originally I didn't have the violinist I have now. And I realized, listening back to the first recordings of the band doing some live stuff, I was like, wait, why don't I have Christopher Stone playing the violin, who now plays the violin? So Chris Stone's one of my best friends. He ran the string camp, the music camp that I told you about, that like made me suddenly go, oh, wait, I need to do something different. And he's just like an amazing human. He's helped us build the studio as well. And he really brings the fun in the band, and the mischief and the cocktails. So, and he sort of grew up playing beautiful, like Scottish folk music, but then studied classical hardcore, and is now he's just finished a PhD on like left-hand fingerboard navigation. He's like Dr. Stone in like how to, he's been studying all the amazing guys in the US that improvise like super awesome jazz and bluegrass stuff on the fiddle, and he's like analyzing everything. So he's kind of great in that regards, and he mixed the album. Nice. So
all right. So I have a huge appreciation for bluegrass musicians. Like, you brought up bluegrass. We do a bluegrass festival we don't do it, but we do media for a bluegrass festival every year down in the Florida Keys. Awesome. And the first year we went down there, it was like my sound engineer nor I knew very little about bluegrass. It was just like my mom and dad were like, hey, there's this awesome music festival that comes down where we vacation every winter. You guys should come down, reach out to the promoter and see if you could do like videos or podcasts or whatever it is you want to do. And I'm like, all right, I'll do that. And it was like November, the festival's in January. I'm like, we might not be able to get in this year, but I'll try. Reached out, they're like, yeah, we'd love to have you down. cool. We went down there, knew nothing about bluegrass. And within the first 2 years, it was like some of the best bluegrass musicians that anybody's ever seen were down there. And like, I don't, do you know who Billy Strings is?
Yes.
He was
so cool.
Yeah, he was there like that second year, and we're just sitting backstage talking, and I'm like, I should probably podcast with this guy. He seems to know what he's doing. But every time we'd go to talk to him, it would be like a set would start up and we couldn't hear nothing. So it was like,
yeah, right.
All right, well, that's a thing. So we just let it go. And then 2 years later, he's playing late night and like all these really cool venues. And it's like, well, missed our shot there. So that's.
Yeah, I love bluegrass. We've got a really sweet festival in a town called Dorrigo, which is northern New South Wales. Beautiful. It's on a plateau, and they have the folk and bluegrass music festival, and they usually have someone come over from the US, and then they have there's a pretty tight, cute scene in Australia as well for bluegrass as well. Awesome. It was funny, you were saying like what were you also listening to at the time, and I was like, oh, actually I was listening to quite a lot of Bella Fleck.
Okay.
And a really great quartet. They're not bluegrass, but they have definitely influences of bluegrass in there. Called the Fretless.
Okay, I know who that is. Yep.
Yeah,
I know
cool. Yeah, awesome. So I hung out with those guys at the Woodford Folk Festival in 2019.
Oh, wow.
Was it? Yeah, 2018 to 19.
Yeah.
And had a ball, and they're just beautiful people. Oh,
nice.
They're so great. So yeah.
So for my personal notes, when is this Bluegrass Festival? Is it?
Good question. I mean, the last couple have unfortunately been canceled, thanks COVID, but usually it's in October.
Okay. Everybody that I talk to that lives in Australia in general say if we're going to come out, it's October and November. That's when all the really good festivals are, and that's when like the seasons are just right. It's not too hot, not too cold.
True.
You know, so.
But you've also got to get to Woodford when it happens again.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the biggest folk, world music, everything festival.
Will definitely keep that on my list.
Yeah.
Because
it's a must do, I think.
Like we really wanted to go to Australia last year. Like we were really trying to figure out a way to make it happen, but obviously with COVID, it wasn't going to. And I don't think it's going to happen this year just because I don't know what the travel restrictions are like. And if we've got a quarantine for 2 weeks,
it's tricky. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens though. As soon as it opens, we're going to start traveling. It's going to be awesome. So yeah, awesome. I do want to talk about how you kind of released this album and all that stuff, because you did something, like I just said earlier, you did something that I've been telling a lot of musicians, that there's a way to use Spotify without giving away all your music for free. And you did it. So you released Golden Light and Complete as One as the two radio singles on Spotify, which is amazing because it feeds right into that Spotify algorithm, gets people to notice you, gets people to listen, and then you release your album. You released it on Bandcamp, correct?
Yeah. So that's like the main place that I send people to. I'm like, Bandcamp, get it, guys. This is for new music. It's, and it's getting better and better, like the interface and the app. Like, just a few years ago, you used to have CDs and you'd put CDs on. Like, how have you all become so mindless that you just have to put a Spotify playlist on and you don't even know what you're listening to anymore? And I decided, because it started happening to me, I was like, hold on, I'm starting to devalue the music that I'm listening to. Yeah. And so I wanted to change that. But it was kind of also just a decision not to want to engage in it anymore. Yeah. So both my partner and I were like, we're actually just getting stressed and feeling, I suppose, the weight of like having to have loads and loads of streams on Spotify to be important or to be taken notice of. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm not like a giant pop star.
Yeah.
And I think even the guys, like we know, some of our friends are in Lime Cordial. I don't know if you know that group, but they're kind of quite big and they've, you know, got millions of streams and stuff. And they said, yeah, we don't make money off the streams. You know, they're like a glorified t-shirt company.
Yeah.
They say they make it off the live gigs and t-shirts.
Yeah.
So, and it was my point where I went, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be like spending hours and hours of my life hoping to be on a playlist.
Yeah.
I should be, you know, spending more time building up my Patreon following and building up Bandcamp following. You know, we've got our little label on Bandcamp and we've got it on a couple of streaming platforms. Tidal. We switched over to Tidal ourselves. And so my kind of, feeling in that is that you can put it in a couple of places if people really, really need to stream. But you encourage people to go like, yeah, these platforms are really convenient. That's great. But if you find yourself listening to an album over and over again, you really love it, just go and give the artist $10-$20. Come on, people. You know?
Well, because the reason that I brought this up is because I think a lot of independent musicians kind of see Spotify or Tidal or a lot of these streaming services as the only revenue source. And it's like, no, you got to start treating them like they're social media platforms, which they're not at that level yet where you can like interact on those pages. But I don't see why not in the next 5 years that Spotify isn't its own like social media platform where everybody's got their profile and it's like, oh, hey, really love this song. And they're leaving like comments and all that stuff. So using these streaming platforms is more of a promotional tool instead of the end all be all of your income. You know, I think that's a really smart decision, especially on the independent level, because the only people making money off of Spotify are Spotify and the people getting billions of streams. So, and then podcasts. Absolutely.
And then they have also agreements, you know, with their record companies with Spotify to be getting a higher percentage.
Yeah.
So it's like, I've never thought of it as an income stream. It's not an income stream.
No.
Maybe it's an income trickle.
Yeah.
You know, but what am I going to do? Make $2 in a year? I mean,
like, I mean, if you make an extra couple of bucks off of Spotify, cool, that's great. But don't put all your music out on Spotify. Put like 1 or 2 singles off an album. That's enough to keep you in the zeitgeist or in the algorithm and all that fun stuff. And then if you're doing live shows, sell the hard copy, sell vinyl, which I know you've got dropping here soon. That's got me really excited. I love when bands sell vinyl.
Awesome.
But I know how expensive
it's a big
it is.
deal. It's very expensive. I'm selling pre-orders at the moment to try and fund it.
Nice. That's my only concern because I see it a lot more in Australia where bands are pressing vinyl a little bit more consistently. And it's like, man, I'd love to buy one, but I don't know what it's going to cost me to ship it over to the US here.
And we actually sometimes buy vinyl from the US of bands that we like, you know, and the postage is a little bit exy. It's like, could be like $25 postage or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's...
I suppose it just depends how much you really want it, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like I keep making the joke that when I do get over to this Australia, it's going to be like spending thousands of dollars on bands merch that I just didn't want to pay that extra postage for and bring that empty suitcase because I'm going to have a stack of vinyl and T-shirts and all this stuff. So that's great. That's awesome. We'll see how it all plays out. But it's funny about vinyl, though, you know, it's expensive, sure, to ship it to the US. It's expensive to ship it in Australia. Is it? Like, it's at least like
12, 15, maybe $15 to ship
wow.
someone some vinyl. And so there's a lot of people in Australia who are like, it's too expensive to ship vinyl from Sydney to Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's expensive. Like unless you're doing mass bulk shipping, it's expensive to ship. Period. So
Yeah, totally.
No, that's awesome. But once again, just using Spotify as a promotional tool is an amazing idea, and I really love that you guys are pulling it off and selling hard copies and not giving away all your music.
Yeah.
So
I think it was an interesting decision. And then once we made the decision not to put anything else up there, it was like, well, I feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you're selling your music, you don't have to have the biggest fan base to make a comfortable living. Like I got a buddy that lives 6 hours from me. I'm in Central Texas and he lives out in West Texas. And he's got like maybe 200 just like hardcore fans that are all about what he does. Anytime he puts on a show, 70 of them show, like whatever it is. And he's like, dude, I set out a Patreon that has 200 Patreons and they all pay like $15 a month. I'm sitting pretty and I've got 200 hardcore fans. It's not that hard to maintain. Like, yeah, I'm not making millions of dollars, but I'm making just off of Patreon itself $2,500 a month plus whatever I get for shows and then merch and then all that other stuff. So it's
that's the dream.
Yeah,
that's the dream. Like, man, if I can get 200 patrons on my Patreon, I would be stoked.
Yeah.
I think I have maybe 20 at the moment, but
but
even that is like nothing to sniff about. And I think it's something that you want to build up over a gradual period of time. And it's interesting. There's a lot of people that talk about like super fans.
Yeah,
it's the super fan. It's the person who's like, I love your music. I'm going to buy your album.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to come to your show. Or if you've got a live stream, I'm going to, pay for the live stream or whatever. Or I'm going to join the Patreon. Once you've got a whole bunch of those people, you don't need billions of people to be like playing your things.
Yeah, for sure. So the album's out now, and you also released a music video for the album, Nightbirds, right? Name of the song?
Yes. So I released a video for all of the singles. Nightbirds actually came out as a single as well, just at the end of last year. But that was when I decided like no more Spotify. But yeah, so I brought out, I did the thing where I brought a single and then I did a video. So Complete as One has a video, which was the first one that I'd made. It's very, very silly. It's a green screen video with the whole band. And yeah, hopefully people get a laugh out of that. All of my friends got a laugh out of it. It was pretty good. And then Golden Light, was all shot actually in my bedroom because that's what the song is about. It's about the golden light in the afternoon that comes into the room. And those two I did all myself, like I did all the filming and stuff. And then this latest one that we brought out, it's for the radio edit of Nightbirds. And I think it's probably like the biggest project.
Yeah.
One of the biggest projects I've ever sort of tried to put together in terms of a video anyway. So it's got about 12 or 13 dancers and then the band and the videographer is an amazing guy from Brisbane actually. So I'm in Sydney and we flew him in. His name's Tani Dyer and he runs a great company called Raw Mint Video and he's an amazing musician. So he's sort of like, those two things combined, videographer and musician, is just like perfect. He gives it 2,000% everything he's doing. It's really great. And yeah, I had this idea of getting a whole bunch of beautiful dancers of different styles and cultural backgrounds and experiences to come together and create a piece sort of highlighting some of their styles, but then contributing to one choreography as well together. So they actually sent me a whole bunch of movements before the shoot, and I put them together in a choreography that everyone learnt separately, and then we came together and on the weekend of the shoot and sort of had a moment to rehearse. And we were on the beach at 4:45 in the morning, for the sunrise. We were in a back alley at 6 p.m. that night, with the graffiti and the lights, doing a dance party in an alley. And we were in the studio that day with lighting, and then the next day we were in a bush setting. And I'm just really stoked how it turned out. I had a really good time editing it together because there's so much. Yeah, I did all the editing as well. It's like you can relive the day over and over again, but through different lenses, different people dancing, and it's just beautiful. Yeah. Nice. So yeah, that's sort of how that all came about. Awesome. So there's like tango in there, of course. I had a friend tango dancer in there. There's some beautiful contemporary First Nations dance. There is like some traditional classical Indian dance and some hip hop, Afro, kind of Afro group, kind of Brazilian, Afro-Brazilian hip hop.
Yep.
Break dancing.
Yep.
And,
I was.
Lots of things.
That's what I really enjoyed about the video was it seemed like you really shot for the moon because there was a lot going on. There was a lot of different aspects that couldn't have been easy to pull off. And I really appreciated it about the video, and so I just wanted to compliment you on that. And the fact that you edited it yourself is really amazing as well. Is that something that you've done before, edit music videos, or was this like your first attempt?
It's one of the skills that I've been working on during COVID for the lockdown, because we started, my partner and I, Nick and I, started learning how to live stream. And one of the first things when we all went into lockdown that I did was I looked for a good camera secondhand on the secondhand market. Bought the camera, was like, right, like video's where it's at. If I'm not online with video, like no one's going to be watching anything of what we're creating. So yeah, I've sort of gradually been learning. Lucky for me, the guitarist in the group, Luke, is also like a Final Cut Pro expert. So he gave me all these little lessons on how to get into it. And so doing the first couple of music videos were, big learning curves for me. And then this last one, the footage is just so amazing. Like I felt like it was actually just a joy to put it together because the footage from Tani was just like, so beautiful. I didn't really have to do very much with it. I just had to put it in the right spot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It was very well shot. It's amazing. So the fact that it's an independent music video, it's just like you fooled me on that one.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't get funding for it, and I got very broke from paying everyone.
Oh, I'm sure. I've been in that situation before. I know what that's all about. So
yeah,
I've had to bring people in, pay them for their services, and then it's just like, well, at least I got a good project out of it, or a product out of it. So exactly.
And look, I really, being a musician, like I want to value artists. If I can't preach to other people like, pay artists for their time, and then be asking artists, hey mate, can you come and do me a favor and be in this video or something? I don't have any money. It's like, no. If you're going to do something, like you find that you save the money, you decide not to have something else, and you give it to the people for their time and mammoth efforts, it's really huge, and everyone contributed their heart and soul. So it's really cool.
For sure. So you'd mentioned that one of the struggles that you had with this album and when to release it was kind of obviously because COVID and not being able to tour off of it.
Yeah.
What was kind of the final decision point where you were like, okay, now it's a good time to release it?
I was gonna release it last year. And I think we got hit with a lockdown for like 4 months last year in like August or something, July, August, September, October. I think we didn't come out until November.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And I'd planned, there was some festivals and stuff, and with another group of mine called Chaika that we were supposed to have, and that all got cancelled again. It was like the second time for that festival. And then because I'm the one that books the tours for all of my projects usually that I'm in, and does that management side of things, I just, like so many people, I just had this really hard time being like, I can't do it. I can't book a tour and spend, hundreds of hours, and then overnight everything's gone and there's no compensation. That was also the point coming out of it last year, that the government was like, no more compensation anymore. And all the artists, and we were all just going like, what just because we're allowed to go out doesn't mean people are going to go out. We still had to cancel heaps of shows because no one would buy tickets, no one was going out. So it was kind of around that point where I was able to, we came out, and I was like, right, I've got to put out the video for Nightbirds. I was like, I've got to do it quickly. So I managed to like get that out. I did a show like the weekend that we had this massive COVID explosion coming up to Christmas, and like half the audience didn't want to come out anymore. And I was just going, oh my God. And then my drummer got COVID, and I was like, oh my God. And then we sort of, over Christmas, it was a very weird period of, mostly kind of not doing things. And I was like, okay, this is it. Like, I can't just keep putting it off. I'm not going to be able to book a tour. So I'm just going to launch it and just going to put it out there. I had a little listening party online with some friends, and sent it to all the radio stations, and just decided it needs to be out there. And now I'm booking a tour, hopefully. Well, I am. It's for July. So
nice.
Yes, fingers crossed that we'll be able to go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I think you will be. I think we're kind of, not to go too political and just kind of leave everything else that's going on in the world. I think we're at a point now where everything's just kind of, people are starting to get impatient and want to get out and enjoy things. So
I think we were sort of we were having these conversations at the end of last year when things were coming up to Christmas, and we had this big outbreak, and everyone was like, but people aren't going to stay indoors anymore. Even if they put restrictions on, people are not going to stay indoors anymore. Like, they can't handle it. The toll of like the mental health for people, and people's financial situations, especially if the government wasn't going to pay you to stay at home, and not have work. Like, everyone's like, no, we have to be living our lives. So,
it's wild to think that at least for me personally, in 2 weeks exactly, it'll be 2 years since we got sent home from work and put into lockdown. And it's just now that, like, within the last week at work, they're like, okay, we feel comfortable enough that you don't have to social distance and you don't have to work. We've got entire vaccinated work staff, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen, at kind of at this point. And it's like, we start looking at the calendar and whatnot, and it's like, man, almost 2 years. And I remember when this first started, it was like 2 weeks, 2 months, maybe.
Yeah.
So
weird. Yeah, I was on tour with a band of mine, Chaika, And yeah, we had members that had given up work that year to be on tour. Like we'd planned to go to Europe, a lot of stuff. And we were in the middle of this,
big
fairly
tour.
extensive, just like Australian tour. And it was just the most bizarre thing, sort of arriving at a festival that had just gotten cancelled and then just having this flood of emails sort of coming in from all these venues. And we're like, I suppose we'll go home, Yeah. And then not seeing each other for like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Straight off.
Crazy.
Bizarre.
Like I remember, so you know what South by Southwest is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So where I live, it's about an hour and a half from where where Austin, Texas. So 2 years ago, right before the pandemic started, it was like my first time being in the area. I had just moved to Texas and I knew South by was coming up and I was like, oh, hey, I know a few people that are going. And so I started reaching out to a bunch of musicians. I had all this stuff booked because they had to come right through where I lived to get to Austin. And so it made sense. We were going to do a podcast or whatever we were going to do. And then South by got canceled right before everybody got thrown into lockdown. And just that day that it happened, email after email after email saying, hey, we're not going anymore. We have to cancel. And it's just like, so the 4 days that I took off of work that I had booked solid, just like that opened. So
yeah.
Wild times. So you'd mentioned that you're in the process of booking a tour for July. How long of a tour are you looking at, or what's kind of the thought process going into this?
Yeah, I'm looking at doing kind of like 3 weeks at the moment. And it coincides with the school holidays here that we have. And yeah, I'd like to see some friendly faces in some different cities. We generally take like the East Coast route a lot of the time when we're touring. So Sydney, we go up to Queensland, like Brisbane area and stuff, and then go down to Melbourne. Just hitting up all those old venues and new venues. There's a lot of things have changed over the last couple of years. Like some venues have closed down, some new ones have opened up. So just trying to reestablish some relationships or establish new relationships with venues and bookers and stuff. That's an interesting little journey.
I really imagine how hard that is.
Yeah, it's big. Like I'm a lover of spreadsheets. I have a lot of spreadsheets for organizing of of musical activities. And I have like a big one for this other group, Chaika, that I was doing a lot of tour management for, and I was playing with them. And I've sort of looked at that and I've gone through them and I'm like, I think, heaps of these festivals like have gone under. These don't exist anymore. Oh, this venue doesn't exist anymore. So I'm like, okay, time to start a new spreadsheet. Which is crazy because it's like there's thousands of venues and festivals on that sheet. So it's like, okay, this is a lot of admin time. To build that up again.
See, that's something that I've been trying to build up, but since I'm not a touring musician, I don't make those contacts on the regular, where like having like a little black book of contacts for venues and festivals because every day I see something on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter saying, hey, who do we know that runs a venue or has connects with a venue in this city or this city? I'd love to be able to just be like, oh, hey, here's 20 different contacts. Have fun,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's also interesting because it's sort of not really, from what I can gather here, it'd be nice if there was like a centralized directory, wouldn't it? There's an idea. But even, there's a couple of sort of official music bodies in Australia, and there isn't really much like that. There's a few pages on managers and bookers and stuff like that, but there isn't really like a venue directory, which could be pretty cool. There's a fairly new union called Musicians Australia that have started up, which are doing great things. And they do have something called a gig map, which is kind of like people reporting on venues. So if they have a good experience or a bad experience. But I think, there's scope maybe for that to expand. That'd be cool. But, you know, just like you said, if you're not on the scene, you're not hearing the goss, you don't know what's out there. And you can't always find everything online. Like I've been doing a lot of sort of snooping of other people's tour schedules and being like, oh, that's a new venue. You've never heard of that. Oh yeah, right. They've only just opened, you know? So rather than, oh, I'm at a festival, let's talk to this friend and that friend and the other friend. Hey, where are you off to next? And you take note, and then you meet the people, because festivals are obviously like a great hub for people from all over to come together. And we often get bookings from playing at a festival and then meeting someone else like, come and play at my festival, come and play at my venue. Which doesn't happen online really. So it kind of sucks.
For sure. You just threw out several different ideas that I've been playing with for a very long time, and it's not easy to deal or get it going just because I don't have a tech background. I've been throwing around this idea of a pocket tour guide / tour manager app idea where, like, let's say you're on tour in the United States, for instance, and you have a show in Texas, and then you have a show in Colorado, and in between you have an open day. So you're like, it's a travel day or whatever. And somebody says, oh, hey, you're in this area, I need somebody to play. And it alerts you that there's an open gig on a night that you have an open night. Or if like a gig cancels or something. So like very social media-esque in nature. It's something I'm working on, but it's going to take some cool. It's going to take some effort. So
quite a bit of tech behind all that app development.
For sure. So hopefully this tour goes off without a hitch for you.
Thanks.
When you're touring in Australia, are you driving or are you flying?
Usually over the years I've been driving, unless it's something where you might just be going to like one specific place, and then it doesn't make sense to drive all the way there. It would make more sense to sort of fly. But yeah, because of the gear, you know, the keyboards and the amps and all the rest of it, it's handy to have everything on the road. And also I think that, you know, some of the best experiences for me performance-wise is actually the smaller community gigs. So stuff at, you know, small towns with their local hall, or it's a house concert that someone puts on a series. Those are really special, and you can't really get to those without driving. So it's not kind of like, oh, we'll just fly into this main city and do one gig, because we're not like a big rock star, you know, rock stadium kind of band as well. I could imagine maybe it would be different if we were. But yeah, I think music, especially in the alternative music scene and the folk and world music scene, the jazz scene, they're really the musicians that tend to go to the small venues. You know, they go into the small towns. It's probably the bread and butter of the tour money as well. You know, making sure that you go through all of these smaller places, and they're the most appreciative. You know, like somewhere like Sydney, they're spoilt for choice most of the time. There's so many things on every night they might be able to go and see. And when you go to a little South Coast town and, 100 people turn up and they're all just like so excited because this is like the event of the month.
Yeah.
It's great. It's such an awesome vibe. You feel closer to people as well. Sometimes if you play like a really big show, you can feel a little bit, I mean, it can be amazing, really amazing, but you might not have that opportunity afterwards to like hang out and have a beer with, the locals or stay with the locals. I stay a lot. We get billeted a lot by people who are, maybe they're friends of the organizers or whatever.
Yeah.
And you get to see really cool houses and meet different people, see parts of the countryside you never see. Yeah. I love that.
That's the really cool part about just driving and being out there in general. You get to see parts of the country and the world you don't usually get to see. Like, especially when we do like our live and amplified trips, like just getting and driving. Like there's one point we drove from South Florida all the way up to Montana, which is like a 7-day road trip because it's like 5,000 miles or whatever it is. And it's like some of the stuff I saw on that road trip, I'll never forget. Like it was absolutely amazing. So
you see some stunning things. You see some stunning landscapes. You meet people. I found like you meet people with amazing houses too. Like a lot of people that have built their own houses that are not like any other houses that you would see anywhere. That's super inspiring. I love that.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
So once you kind of get this tour scheduled and like you're up and running on the tour, what's next? Are you working on another album, working on more music? What's kind of next in the line of things?
Yeah. So definitely for this group, I've got new ideas, new songs on the way. So I could expect maybe next year a new album, or maybe late this year, but we're kind of already into the year a bit, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I also, I have this songwriting project with my partner as a duo. So we've got quite a lot of songs that we're releasing with that. It's called Little Clouds. Mainly those are probably the two projects that I'll be working on. Plus a lot of piano improvisations. So I do a thing called slow streams. I did that through the lockdowns. I used to live stream and also pre-record sort of just calm piano improvisations, like long form, in the kind of Nils Fromme vibe.
Yeah.
So I've got a second volume that I need to bring out for that. So there's lots, lots to keep me busy for sure.
For sure. Where were you streaming at?
Usually on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a time where we tried to do like 3. So we went to Facebook and we went to Twitch as well. But I think maybe it's a little stronger if it's just in the one spot.
Yeah.
So it's easier to sort of market like we're in this one spot.
That's the decision we ended up making because so originally when we started doing the podcast, we were on Facebook, and then Facebook started acting weird, and I was like, okay, well, it's time to make a switch. And I was originally, because we had a lot of people that were watching us on Facebook, and it was just kind of like, I don't really want to leave them out in the cold because they've been with us for at least since the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about doing the triple stream where it was like Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, all that stuff. And then a couple of friends of mine said, no, just pick one and stick with it because you're not going to get the return that you think you will. And so we ended up just going with Twitch, and we're building our following on Twitch. So it's getting there. and I'm really
Yeah, that's
happy.
good.
So,
Yeah, awesome.
but,
I think we're due to start up some live streams again tomorrow night here.
nice.
So I'll be going live tomorrow, I think at like 7:30
Okay.
here
Okay.
on my YouTube. Yeah.
Awesome. That's the only
Not sure what time that is over there, though.
Oh, that's 7:30 p.m. would be
It'd be a silly time over there.
2 or 3 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and that's the wild thing about trying to watch a lot of Australian streams is because a lot of musicians stream more towards the evening, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but I'm not staying up till 3 a.m. because
totally.
I do have to get up the next day at some point.
Yeah.
So
I leave them all up there. So they're all. I actually have like on my YouTube, I've got a whole playlist called Live Music Good Times, which is what we termed our live stream series. And we've even got some like guests and stuff that did some live streams as well, different musicians who came and guested with us or by themselves. But mostly it was kind of a reason to keep playing music for Nick and myself. You know, we needed something like every week to be like, we're working on music, you know, we're gonna get somewhere and do something.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
But I don't want to keep you too much longer. I want to be respectful of your time. But before we leave and kind of wrap all of this up, we got to do our rapid question. I haven't come up with any really cool name for it, but we have a random question generator, and I'm going to fire off a few of these questions at you.
I love that.
Okay. So we'll probably do about 5 or 6. We'll keep it in. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's hard. I reckon healing.
Okay.
Like, you know, healing wounds or
so like
fixing
Wolverine
cancers and
like
stuff.
What? Yeah, I got you.
Other people yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. Is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable?
A fruit.
If you were
I have an epic garden, so I know that.
If you were a chess piece, what chess piece would you be?
Queen. I mean, come on.
Perfect. You just became a member of the Spice Girl. What is your Spice Girl name?
I always loved Scary Spice.
Perfect. Would you rather your shirts always be 2 sizes too big or 1 size too small?
Oh, too big. They're good for gardening, big shirts. Yeah.
Okay. Fair. I as I was reading it, I was like, there's only one really good answer for this, but okay. At least to me anyways. What movie would you want to turn real?
Oh, say that again?
What movie would you want to turn into real life?
Gosh. I don't really watch many movies. And the ones that I'm thinking are real life. What did I recently watch? What about Soul? That was pretty cute.
Yeah, that was a great movie. I enjoyed it.
That was awesome. Yeah.
And then last question. Hold on. Last question. Sorry about that. Your arch nemesis challenges you to a duel. What is your weapon of choice?
My piano.
Okay. Perfect. Deal. I dig it. Awesome. I'm sorry. I shut my phone off because I was like, I'll remember that question. And then the second it came on, I was like, what was that question again? So anyways, but it's been an absolute blast chatting with you. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Can't wait to see you live, hopefully once we come over to Australia and, listen to any new music and all that fun stuff. Anybody that's out there listening now, make sure you're going out to check upon these Open Skins Sorry. I don't know why that tripped me up, but it did.
It's because it's kind of a play on words, like upon these open seas, right?
Yeah.
But it's upon these open skins.
Yeah.
And if you like the artwork as well, it's going to look beautiful on vinyl.
Nice.
It's going to look really nice on the vinyl.
I'm going to have to figure out a way to buy the vinyl. I love vinyl so much. But really appreciate you. If anybody wants to check out what else you got going on, new music shows, or check out the album, where's the best place to do that?
Probably my website. So that's music by Emily Rose, all one word, .com.au.
Gotcha. Yeah. And if they want to interact with you on social media?
Probably Instagram's the cool place to be for that. So it's music _by _Emily Rose.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for chatting with us. It's been an absolute blast. And I know everybody that's listening and will be listening once we release this on audio will hopefully go check out the album. It's an amazing album. I really enjoy it. It just got I hate saying this. I added the songs that are on Spotify to our playlist, but that's just because that's one of the few things that we can do to help spread the love and hopefully, get a few people to go in and buy the album. So
awesome.
But really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us. And until next time, we have another podcast tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So we will see you all then.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Yep.
Have a good one.
Yep.
Bye.
Cool. We're good.